Our first interview starts now, and we will be looking at activities this weekend, particularly related to the outstanding elections across the country, and of course in 2 states also where the results of the elections were declared inconclusive, and that's Adamawa and Kebbi states. Outstanding elections also across the countries, and we have 2 thoroughbred, allow me to use the word, in the electoral college.
I like that.
Going to be dissecting what would happen with a bird's eye view, of course, on ensuring that all arrangements are put in place. I have joining us the elections manager, Yauga Africa, and we also have Mr. Austin Aigbe, who is also a thoroughbred in elections and governance. So good to have you, gentlemen.
Thank you. I thought it was talking about bread.
Austin. All right, let's come to you this morning. Maybe I'll begin with you, Austin. In fact, it's less than 24 hours, counting down to that election. Let's look at what your expectations are.
Pretty going to be very exciting elections because inconclusive elections are becoming a challenge in Nigeria. Usually when you have an inconclusive poll, gladiators in that area take advantage of the location to secure it and use the word in quote, togerize it. And they can use all manner. They don't need police, they don't need the military. They just utilize their own men and make sure that they suppress every available vote in their favor. And that's the challenge. We see that happen before, and we don't expect it to happen now. So what I think that INEC can do is that because of the precedent, that it's just limited number, and you can easily know the number. You know the difference in the number already. In Andama, we know the difference in number. In a Kebbi, you know the difference in number. You already know whether it's your stronghold, where the poll is coming from. You already know whose advantage is going to be. All you need to do is to ensure that you block out, you fence out every known opposition to your winning the elections. And if you got the support of the state, if you got the support of the state, and sincerely, both states does have almost the same pattern, Kebbi and Adamawa. The only difference is that the state, the governor of Kebbi right now is with the ruling party, but of course you see the dynamics is a bit changing in that state. INEC must use its whistle. By the time it discovers that what happened in Oshu is going to repeat itself, blow the whistle immediately and halt the process and correct it. In the field of play, in the football field of play, when players want to utilize their arm to engage their fellow opponent, the referee immediately come in and issue the cards. We think that to maintain peace of order in those 2 elections, particularly in these 2 elections, the cards must be ready, the yellow cards and the red cards.
Okay, James, let's look at the electoral management processes, for example. Prior to the presidential elections and during the elections and also the gubernatorial elections, at the situation room, for example, there were a lot of gaps, that stakeholders actually put forward to ensure that INEC closed the lead and ensure a transparent electoral process. From that time till now, what are some of those gaps that INEC should close at this time so we would have a process in Kebbi and Adamawa, of course, other outstanding elections across the country, that at the end of tomorrow, for example, civil society stakeholders can still go back and say, yes, a lot has been done to ensure a transparent process.
Thank you very much, Pera. And once again, happy birthday. Well, exciting times ahead, but I am cautiously optimistic, but also expectant that the election management body will have learned from the lessons of February 25th and also March 18th. The expectation is one from Nigerians that deployments will be early. INEC had enough time between March 18th till this moment to prepare. Granted that the last time we know the election materials were produced in country, so I don't expect to hear that they had gone outside of the country to reproduce these materials. And we 24 hours to the election, by now we should be talking about these materials already getting to the rack centers. Some of the challenges we had from the last time were the concerns around accessing cash, the cash crunch, and also the concern around petrol, especially for mobilizing their personnel to the polling units. To some extent, I think that has been resolved. People are able to access cash now. I don't expect that that should feature in the conversation for the elections tomorrow. But then, my experience with supplementary election is that, small as they will be, they are always challenging. Challenging because the other actors, especially the political class, wouldn't allow INEC to do what INEC is supposed to do. And also, if you like, other people, I mean supporters of the political parties. So I expect from the part of the security that deployment will be total to all those locations, not just total, but also that deployment also for security will be early, because what we have also seen in the past is that in the morning of the election is when they will be doing parade and when they will be giving marching orders to their team members to go to the field. So I expect that by this evening all of that will have been resolved, and then they will be able to support the deployment of INEC as early as possible. Another point to note also is the resource management process, the resource collation. It was a big issue, especially from the presidential, and also we saw a spill-off of that in the gubernatorial elections. We hope that INEC has improved on that. One thing that didn't work well for INEC in the two elections is the way INEC manages its communication, its public communication. Okay. If you go back to those elections, you realize that most of the communication by INEC had been INEC reacting to issues and not INEC necessarily providing information as to how it intends to engage the process. So we hope that by tomorrow, like Austin have said, if they experience any challenge, I would rather we go with how to manage expectations, that if INEC feel it is not conducive or safe for people to even engage the process, that INEC will put a stop to the process before we go ahead with that. But then again, that shouldn't also be an excuse for them at this point in time. They had more than 3 weeks to prepare for these elections, so we expect all these excuses of differences between coalition, IREV, and all of that will have been resolved. But most importantly also, for the election management body, is also we want to see in the way they apply the laws, the electoral laws across all polling units. We want to see consistency in that, because from the gubernatorial election also, it was a problem from the state and gubernatorial election. Inconsistency in application of law, what had led us to this inconclusive gubernatorial election, for instance. There is still the argument that why wouldn't you apply the same rule for Adamawa, for instance, to states like Kaduna, where you have a difference of about 10,000 votes, or states like Ogun, where you have a difference of about 19,000 votes, but you got Adamawa that had like 31,000 votes. So again, this is what we expect tomorrow, that on the part of INEC, it will ensure and enforce strict compliance to the electoral guidelines, and also that there will be communication will be streamlined, and it also will be the same across board from wherever is the control room, which I guess will be from the INEC headquarters, and ensure that it is the same information that goes across all the state. Again, most importantly, there will be no excuse. INEC has the opportunity at this point to put the final nail to, to draw the curtain on the 2023 general election, so we can start preparing for the Kogi and the Bayelsa elections. All
right, Austin, I mean, in terms of preparation and then also calling for the responsibility of political actors, we've already seen statements from the APC spokesperson, Publicity Secretary Mohammed Abdullahi, talking about the chances of Binani in the next election, assuring that she definitely will come out tops. And if you look at the numbers, Binani had 390,275 votes, Wife and Tree had 421,524 votes. And we're looking at 69 polling units in this election. And of course, the PDP has also come out to say, well, it is us that is going to get it because we're already ahead in the poll. The question is, how do we manage political actors in this space, because they are always the trigger for issues such as violence during and even post-election, and it's really a problem for a lot of people concerned.
You know, well, you know that there's some of us who are very gender conscious, who want the state of Adamawa to go in a particular direction.
Absolutely.
But they should not go against the law. While we talk about law, I mean, James has talked about enforcement of the Electoral Act and consistency with the way it follows. I wouldn't have a challenge with INEC in this election. I will not. I will have a challenge in the obstruction of the processes that INEC will put in place. What do I mean? INEC is going to deploy personnel materials, and INEC do not have arms. INEC is not a law enforcement agency. INEC will rely on the security architecture to properly deploy and to properly run the elections. Here you are, this security architecture are controlled by a certain category of people or another level of authority. So INEC don't directly control them. What I just told you, even though James has talked about early deployment, and these are processes, and these processes can go smoothly. And it went smoothly in Osun 2016 until the process started, until the voting itself started. And voters came and they were deprived access to the polling unit. So when you come in to vote and you're told you are not with us, and they take you away. So with that process be called credible at the end of the day. But INEC would have done an election. Whereas voters have been suppressed, so-called voters, and that's why parties need to make this statement ahead of time, that we are going to win. So that when we then win, we can then justify that. But we told you we are going to win. That's also communication, which is being strategic communication. And in any case, before the 1923 election, INEC did fantastically well with communication. That's why everybody head on to whatever we had, and we are now questioning what you now did afterward. But that process, by the time the election started, because the process is not just the election itself or the voting itself, it started pre-election, election, and post-election. And those processes you must have to interrogate together. This is my challenge with this election. INEC is the leader of the electoral process, of the election itself. It does not control the police. However, the Constitution, the Electoral Act does empower the police to manage election security. But INEC is the co-chair of that process. There's a committee set up. So that committee must be able to assure and nip it that we don't need a repeat. So that whoever wins this election will be so free and fair. And don't also forget that in Adamawa, brought back to what James has said, in Adamawa, they had to refer to the IRF to make a final decision. But in no other election it happened. In no other processes it happened. But that was a process that we need to stay with. When there are disputes, the Electoral Act does empower INEC to review the process within a space of time and then make a decision. And that's exactly what happened in Adamawa, because at some point on social media, we already knew that somebody was winning. And some of us get excited until we realize that, no, that was social media result. The essence I'm saying is INEC must enforce its responsibility. However, it may lack some of those ability to enforce its ability. So that's why we must call out at this material time the police, who will need to do the job of securing polling units, securing voters, securing electoral officials, and securing the materials, so that everything works in sync and then everything goes peacefully. My challenge with these two states, these are northeast, northwest. And if you understand these two states, over the period of time, particularly in southern Kebbi, we've had some level of violence and crashes that have happened over time. You don't want this election to generate and trigger to what we don't want to ever see. We want peace in those two states, because particularly in Adamawa, though northeast, though ravaged by insurgency, but the state has maintained some peace trajectory, and we must enforce those peace.
Great. So, James, let's look at efforts to strengthen inclusiveness in these elections. We were at the Situation Room, and when we looked at the dashboard after the elections, it showed a decline in voters' participation. For these two elections, for example, and the other outstanding elections that will be conducted by tomorrow, what are some of the steps that you think that should be taken to ensure that a lot of people come out, exercise their franchise? And the factors that led to voter apathy in the previous elections, are they still there? Will they play a key role in these outstanding elections?
Thank you. But I think I also share the same concern. But before then, just to also make a point on what Austin has said earlier, to be very clear about the Osun that Austin kept referring to is the Osun in 2018 supplementary election that happened in several locations. In that election, politicians refused to even allow observers access to polling units. Before you will be allowed, you have to tie a white handkerchief to indicate that you are siding with one of the parties. So we don't also expect to see a repeat of that in this election. But talking about voter and inclusiveness in this process, to be honest, I am worried. I am concerned that we might see voter fatigue given all that has happened, and also maybe the sort of dissatisfaction that has happened from the previous election, and also the rhetorics that are coming from the institutions that are supposed to inspire confidence, especially around the processes and also the resource management, the recent communication from INEC and all of that. But I'm hoping that voters would not be deterred by that, because they are the important stakeholders in this, and they are also the ones that are going to enforce or ensure who becomes their leader eventually. If you look at the numbers expected in these states, they are actually small. For Adama, about 37,000 or thereabout, but based on people that have collected their PVCs. But if you look between the time that the first election had happened, and now, some people actually travel to go and participate in the process. And if you think about the logistics of traveling and all of that, I am worried that that may not be, for some, it may not be readily available. But beyond that also, like you talk about, I like your choice of word, voter disenfranchisement, because a lot of people will want to say apathy. I don't want to say apathy, because there was effort by the voters to engage the process the last time, but we saw what other stakeholders did to not allow voters to participate. On the part of INEC, for instance, if we go back to the presidential election, the one thing that INEC did that didn't go well with voters is the late commencement. That could have discouraged some persons that came early, and INEC were not there, and perhaps they left and never returned to the polling units. So I am hoping that lessons will have been learned from that, and that people will be able to deploy. Added to that also is the voter profiling we saw in some states. If you are not from this part of the state, or if you are not of this state, you will not be allowed to vote, even when people had registered. Those that were involved in that must understand that as Nigerians and as people that are registered to vote, they have that legal backing, legal support to vote wherever they chose to vote, so long as they are registered and are recognized in that community, in that locality. So for those non-state actors that had a field day the last time, I'm hoping that they have been apprehended, and then this time around, police or the security are going to shine their eyes and ensure that that doesn't happen. But on the part of the voters, we will just continue to encourage them that they, as much as, they should understand, like I said, that they are the most important stakeholders, but importantly also that they should be guided by their conscience as they go to engage, because again, what we know, because the numbers are small, the stakes will be high. And if the stakes are high, there are chances are also that you may hear, now that people are able to access cash, you may hear concerns around vote buying and the like. So, as much as the powers are in the hands of the voters, I think as they go to the field, like I said, they should be ruled out, guided by their own conscience to make the right choice tomorrow.
But also in terms of communication and preparation, I know that for Kebbi State, is the governorship and state assemblies that will be going to the polls, and 20 out of 21 local government area. But up until now, I think the feedback that we're getting is that they're still yet to know the polling units precisely where this the voting is going to be taking place. And I do not know if that is appropriate, or perhaps there must be a reason for that, because I'm considering 24 hours to an election. All of this communication back and forth on polling units would have been provided so that people can prepare adequately. So I do not know if that communicates lack of preparation.
So let me step back a bit, because I won't put that on INEC too.
Okay.
There are those who are vying for these positions. It's your responsibility as political parties. If are the political parties who enjoy or who takes their glory from an electoral process, they are the ones who seek for votes, not INEC. Even though on this platform we can argue that INEC is responsible for voter education. Yes, INEC will tool out polling units in this location, which they have already done anyway. Maybe they are not specific to the name and all, but they know. They know where these things will be happening. They know the location. You just talked about Adamawa just now. The people in that area know. The 7 local government in the Osun we referred to, the politicians went to the people to try to pull them out for their own advantage. It is those who will win. And I see people right now, I have a friend in Kogi who is vying for House of Reps. He's already mobilizing his folks for the election of April 15th. And it started out about 3 weeks ago, after the 2023 February 25th elections. It started mobilizing. That ours have not been declared. It showed the path. And that's exactly what I think should happen. Or it's already happening, because I already see. Truth to be told, maybe for us as observers who wants to go to the field to observe, we may not know the exact location by the kind of thing that is public. But if you ask the commission, if you call the director of information right now, it will have that information pasted. I've not tried to find it, because I thought I'm not really going to be engaging directly in terms of observation, because I'll just be sitting in Abuja and be seeing what's happening. But I know that the voters in those areas does know where the vote will happen. And it is a responsibility of the political parties to amplify the voter education within the people, particularly our members who will be voting there. I don't want to begin to put so many things on INEC basket, because at some point we need to also talk to these folks, particularly political actors, who will directly benefit. I'm not saying benefit in terms of corruption. I'm saying benefit from a process, because in this country you either win or you lose. So there is no middle ground. So you are either a winner or a loser. So for those who want to win, just going back to maybe voter apathy that Perry asked. You see, I am worried, because the voters are limited. So there will be so much attraction. You are going to see a beehive of vote buying in this election. People will be, political parties who want to win. You are talking about 4-year term as governor of a state. And yet the number that will decide you now is not the entire state. You can lose now, even when you are the one winning. You can actually lose. After all, the same one we talk about in Osun, it was the guy who was winning that eventually lost the Osun supplementary election. Yeah. Because you know you can do the math. This thing is mathematics. You're already checking. Already the difference in the vote is it 40-something thousand, 37,000? Okay, 60-something polling units. Who are those that have picked up their PDCs? Who can we reach? And don't forget that you have the register. The voter register is at your disposal. You call them one by one. You know the ones that are voting for you. You mark them. The ones that are not voting for you, you bar them, and then you can actually do what we are talking about just now to bar them. And get the ones that want to vote for you. That is the scenario that may lead to the voter suppression. In an attempt for them to come in and vote, they could actually be oppressed. And then the number will turn down low. And that's not where we are going to. And that's why we are saying that the INEC, and of course security architecture, does have a role to play now. One, to give access to observers. That we don't have to wear anything in support of any party, because we are non-partisan. And that we must put on the table.
All right, let me just call for a quick break, then we'll come back to the conversation, because I was going to take you up on the communications of even the voters themselves. And welcome back to a conversation. We were looking at the countdown to the elections in Adamawa and Kebbi, and we've had in the studio discussing this with us Asanaibe, who is an election analyst and programs manager for elections at YAG Africa, Paul James Ape. So, gentlemen, you're welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'd like that you give us your parting shots to call this interview to a close in the light of the elections, outstanding elections, and of course elections in Adamawa and Kebbi tomorrow. Starting with James, of course.
Well, for me, I would say I hope the election will be conclusively concluded by tomorrow. We got about 8 elections for the Senate, 34 for the National House of Representatives, and of course the ones for the state, and the 2 gubernatorial elections that the politicians will allow INEC to do its work, but most importantly also on the part of the Commission, that the Commission and its own staff will apply themselves to the rules of the election. The Commission will deploy early. Communications will also be improved this time. If there are issues surrounding the elections by tomorrow, INEC should be kind enough to inform Nigerians ahead of time, especially the concerns around the resource management, not to wait until the end of the election to allow Nigerians to be making assumptions about the process, because at the moment, confidence on the Commission is low, and I think INEC has the opportunity now to redeem itself and help to see how it could inspire confidence in its ability to manage the process.
Thank you.
All right, Austin, I mean, earlier I raised the issue of social intervention communications online, especially during the election, that led to early announcement and created a lot of rancor online and offline. How do you think this can be managed? And it's quite a problem.
So as James said, the IRF is the basics for confidence. If INEC want to improve on its credibility and trust, which it had leading to the 2023 election, it must create that integrity level by truly uploading the polling unit results online and pasting the Form 60E, EC60E, at the polling unit for voters to take a shot, snap and send it, and use it socially. The idea is that when more people know that we are winning or we are losing, it's going to reduce tension more, unlike you try to deprive people from access to it. But above all, as I conclude, leadership is about influence and not by force. Those who aspire to lead their people must ensure that it is freely given, it is not forcefully taken. If you forcefully take it, yes, you are going to be the leader, but your credibility will be in question till death do you part. I think it's part of the moral justification or moral inning that every one of us as Nigerians need to imbibe. That you can force your way in, but usually what they say when we're growing up, you can force the horse to the river, but you're unable to force the horse to drink water. Don't force your way in. Let the process pull you up and lead the people sincerely.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming. Well, fingers crossed, our eyes will be on the ballot for tomorrow's election, and hopefully, like you said, it will be the last election in those areas as well for us. And we've been joined by Austin Naiwe and Paul James Ape for this conversation. Thank you, and do have a lovely Friday.
Thank you very much.